coming to you live from Tennessee, from the east to the west. We are talking Cowboys everything. And you just entered
the Cowboy Zone.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cowboy Zone. I'm your host, Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, coming to you live from Memphis, Tennessee. And thank you guys for joining us tonight for another episode of the Cowboy Zone, where we get to celebrate another Victory Wednesday as the Cowboys defeated the New York Jets 30-10 in another dominant performance by our offense as well as by our defense. Thank you guys for joining us. Welcome in. Make sure once you get into the comments that you like, make sure you share. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channels. You can find me on YouTube at Bluff City Cowboys. And also make sure you leave a comment so that we know that you're here watching us on this Wednesday evening. See, we got the comments coming in already. Jack Meeker, thank you for joining. Yes, that defense was definitely sexy as hell, doing their thing against the New York Jets and their new quarterback for the year, Zach Wilson. See, we got my guy Mendoza joining us tonight. Mendoza, as always, thank you for tuning in. Definitely appreciate all your support as well as all the great comments and questions that you leave. So let's get right into it tonight. Got a lot to talk about. Got another big matchup coming up against the Arizona Cardinals. I don't take them lightly. They do have a couple of things that they can do that can give us some problems. I don't think they'll win, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show once we do our game predictions. But they do have a lot of very interesting matchups that they can take advantage of. But before we do that, let's recap last week's game against the New York Jets and talk about some of the key things that happened during the game.
Game recap.
So I've always found it best to start off doing the game recaps by first doing a recap of some of the over-unders that we discussed last week to see if they actually matched up to what we expected. So let's look at some of the over-unders we had for last week and see how the team performed based off of what we thought. So our first over-under, we talked about that dominant defense that the New York Jets have. And, of course, Cooks didn't play, but CeeDee Lamb played, and we had an over-under of 70 yards. And actually, CeeDee Lamb got 70 for both of them because he ended the game with well over 140 yards. I believe it was 143 yards to be exact. Dominant performance by CeeDee Lamb. Cooks was out at the last minute, and Jalen Tolbert had to step in. And Lamb definitely picked up the slack with 11 receptions for 143 yards. Also got some good contributions from Jalen Tolbert with 18 yards on 3 catches, one of those being a very clutch third down to get us a first. I see I got my guy Jeff in the building. Jeff, thank you for joining us also. I always appreciate your great questions and comments as well. I see the views are starting to go up. So as you join us, please make sure you get in the comments. Let us know that you're here. Make sure you ask questions. Make sure you make comments. This is an interactive show. We're all about the fan interaction and engagement. So make sure that if you don't want to ask a question or comment, at least get in here so I can give you a shout out during the course of the show. So, and I saw that Jack Meeker. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go back to the over-unders really quick. Talk about a couple more, and then we'll get into this week's game. Second over-under, we had Zach Wilson making his first full game start at 225 yards. Obviously, our defense just completely dominated today. Zach Wilson only had 170 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. So once again, our defense really stepped up again for a second week in a row. And then we go to the one that was our biggest concern going into this game, and that was the Jets running backs. We know they got the two-headed monsters with Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook. We saw the explosive runs that Brees Hall had week one. Some of us felt, including myself, that there may be an encore presentation by Brees Hall. He may break a couple of long runs. And again, typical dominant Cowboys defense fashion, they held the entire offense to only 60 yards rushing. As a matter of fact, Zach Wilson was the leading rusher on the team with 36 yards. And there was a big thing coming out during the week with Brees Hall saying that he only got 4 carries during the game. So they got a lot to do going back to the drawing board as they play the Patriots. But got to keep emphasizing this. Our defense came to shut things down on Sunday afternoon. I got to give a big shout out to Amanda. Amanda, thank you for joining us over at DC4L. If you guys haven't joined DC4L's group, make sure you do that. Always great comments, always thought-provoking posts by the members, and they do great giveaways and prizes throughout the year. So if you want a chance to win or buy some Cowboys merch at a discounted price, make sure you guys go find DC4L on Facebook. All right, let me get back to one more, and then we'll do a recap of this week's game. Another big one that we had to talk about, looking at the over-under of which team will have more sacks. As you guys know, going into this week's game, we were both top 5 in sacks. And once again, our defense came and stepped up, and they had another multi-sack game. I don't think the Jets had a sack this game. I'll have to go back and check to make sure. They did have 1 sack. I forgot about the Solomon Thomas sack. But our defense ended up with 3 sacks with another multi-sack game from the Lion, Micah Parsons, as well as Osa with another sack as well. So we're going back to the comments. And as I say that, Jack Meeker brings up the comment saying that Osa has announced himself to the NFL. He's powerful, he's smart, and he's technically sound. He's definitely showing us a lot of the traits that we saw with him coming out of college. Glad to see he's finally putting it together. I've been making comments and tweets about him all week, including live during the game. Osa's definitely showing us what happens in that third year for a defensive tackle. Going back to Mozzie Smith, just to bring that up, everybody's kind of worried about Mozzie, but like we all said during the offseason, it takes a defensive tackle time to get his strength and get his technique and to really understand the game. So Mozzie's going to take some time, but Osa right now is right there hitting his peak at a time where the defense is playing at its absolute best. I see we got Van Wild joining us. Van Wild, thank you for tuning in from Oz. So I'm assuming you're across the pond. I can only imagine what time it is there. So thank you for burning the midnight oil to join us for the Cowboy Zone tonight. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to my YouTube channel, Bluff City Cowboys. Hit that subscribe button. Also hit that bell so you will be notified of any future shows. All right, guys. So pretty much Jets game, that's in the bag. Now we got to look ahead to this upcoming matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. And we got my guy Shane Odom joining us as always. I always appreciate your support. Our defense can only get better when Donovan Wilson gets back. Yep, and great point, Mendoza. The fans can't trash Mozzie and then turn around and praise Osa because he's going to get to that point, just like you said. He was a higher drafted pick. Wow, 11:41 on Thursday. So good morning to you, Van Wild. joining us from across the pond. Thank you for joining us again on the Cowboy Zone. Um, and just like Mendoza said, you can't trash Mozzie. Osa's already there. Mozzie's gonna get it. Um, I'm gonna have to start doing a better job of putting up like footage from games because watching that game, you can see the development of Osa pretty much throughout every single snap he made. I mean, the explosiveness he had, the ability to beat double teams at only 280 pounds, the ability to open things up for his teammates. It was all on display during that Jets game. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings us this week against what I would consider a weaker offensive line than what he saw against the Jets. So going back to Jack Meeker, yeah, he's definitely announced himself. And somebody brought up a comment that I wanted to touch base on. I think it was Shane talking about, yeah, our defense can only get better when Donovan Wilson gets back. So I don't want to go into storylines every week going and talking about injuries, but it seems like because we're winning, that's the only big storyline coming out of Dallas right now. The injuries to some of our key players. And that leads us into our question of the week this week, sponsored by DC4L. So this is another opportunity for you guys that are watching right now to join in on the conversation, to let us know your thoughts on the question of the week. I normally post it early during the day on Wednesday, and it got a lot of fan interaction throughout social media. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys' thoughts are on this week's question of the week.
Question of the week.
So, question of the week, leading into Shane Odom's comments. We have a lot of guys who were injured. Brandon Cooks dealing with the strain. Donovan Wilson looks like he's working his way back. Tyler Smith has been injured pretty much the entire season so far. Trying to slow play that quad muscle. And then we had another injury pop up last week with Zach Martin with another soft tissue injury. So all the guys who've been replacing them have pretty much stepped up and done their jobs. The wide receivers, not so much, but Lamb has done it all on his own. We got to see TJ Bass in limited reps last week really hold up, considering he's a rookie. Chuma Edoga has just been like a starter level guard, subbing in for Tyler Smith. And then the rotation of One-Way Thomas, Marquise Bell, Israel Mukwamu, Javon Curse, all those guys have been contributing into picking up the slack for a game changer in Donovan Wilson. So the question for you guys, let me know in the comments, should the team rest some of their key players this week? And if you say yes, let me know which player or which players you think they should rest for this week's game. So I see we got a couple of comments coming in already. I know Amanda was pretty adamant on this one in the Facebook group as well, saying that if they don't sit Zach Martin, I will ride. I'm pretty much on the same lines with you, Amanda. And also, guys, been dealing with some internet issues at the house. So last week the show kind of got cut off. If it gets cut off again, I'll try my best to hop back on within 2 minutes. So make sure you just stick with me if you see me pop out for a second. So yeah, Zach Martin. And let me throw this caveat in for you guys who don't watch other teams play. So I've watched the 2 Cardinals games very closely. This will probably be the 3rd worst offensive line that we faced this year. And it'll definitely be the worst offensive line we've faced to date. So that includes that Giants offensive line that gave up 5 sacks and that Jets offensive line that gave up 3 sacks last week. They got first round pick Paris Johnson at left tackle. You can obviously tell he's still learning the game. And then they just got a bunch of guys. Like that's the best way I can describe it. Is Paris Johnson, and then 4 guys. And we'll talk about a couple of those once we get to some of our key matchups. And on the defensive line side of the ball, this will be by far the worst defensive line we faced this year. So I see we got another one, Jeff saying, don't take this team for granted. Maybe Martin. Jack Meeker saying Martin and Smith. And then Jack also saying they pull in the linebacker to put more safeties on the field. They definitely did that last week. One thing I did notice during the game, Clark only played like 17 snaps the entire game. And One Way and Marquise were subbing in and out of that linebacker spot. So something very unusual for you guys to pay attention to this week, because I haven't seen Clark on the injury report. And to me, he had a very good game week 1. So the fact that they pulled him, it kind of gives me like some caution about what's taking place and how they're trying to adjust things as we move forward in the year. Jack Meeker says Bass is going to end up another undrafted free agent still. Definitely, he's already on his way, in my opinion. And Mendoza said, I play most of them if they're ready to go, get the lead, then sit them. That's also a good alternative, Mendoza. Just let them come in. My only problem with that is, and like I said, what you just said, Mendoza, I said the same thing on my post. All of these are seemingly soft tissue injuries, and soft tissue injuries do not take a lot to tweak. So I don't want to see Zach Martin come in for 10 plays and then he start limping to the sideline. I don't want to see Tyler Smith, after not playing 2 weeks, come in and then something starts to pull. So I don't mind giving them that, especially considering how weak this offensive and defensive line both are. Donovan Wilson, it looks like he was a full go today at practice, so it seems like he might be at 100%. So I would definitely bring him in on limited reps. And Brandon Cooks, haven't heard a lot about that injury lately. I 1 to 2 week injury, so we'll just have to see how things go. Shane Odom saying it's a long season. If they're injured, yes, but if they can play, that's what they're getting paid for, and that's what the bye week's for. I mean, I agree with you, Shane. That's that old school mentality. Like if you can suit them, if you can suit it up, you need to play. The only concern I have about that is our next 3 games are New England, the big game against San Francisco, and then another big game against the LA Chargers. I want to make sure we're at 100% for those games. I feel like our margin for error in this game is very wide. So even if we were down 2 or 3 starters, it might be more competitive than we want, but I don't think we'll have any concerns about getting the job done. So especially a guy like Zach Martin, and I think throughout the comments, everybody's kind of saying the same thing. I don't want to take a chance of Zach Martin not being healthy, especially playing against that very underrated Patriots defense, which is probably top 5 that nobody's talking about. And then we know what the Niners bring and all the first round picks they have across their front 4. And then you lead into the Chargers game, which is like a borderline AFC Pro Bowl team when you just look at the names across their defense. So offensively, particularly with Zach Martin, I may want to slow play that one a little bit. I would look at Tyler Smith and see how he does, but definitely something to keep a watch on. I see we got William Coulter joining us as always. Thank you for joining us, William. I always appreciate your support. I see the views are still going up. So if you're watching right now, it looks like we have about 7 people consistently making comments, but the views are a lot higher than that, and they're still going up. So if you're joining us, especially for the first time, Make sure you get in the comments and let us know you're there so we can shout you out. All right, guys. So let's talk about some of the key matchups in this week's game. Like I said before, I think we're going to have a wide margin in this game, but they do have some players that definitely need to be watched out for. So let's talk about some of the key matchups that we can look for in determining the outcome of this week's matchup.
Key matchups.
All right. First key matchup. Marquise Hollywood Brown versus Trayvon Diggs. Now, with this one, I probably could have put about 3 cornerbacks and a safety right here. I just put Trayvon Diggs because he does play outside a lot. What I noticed about the Cardinals, which you guys will be aware of, and Jeff saying ourselves versus complacency, I definitely understand the logic, Jeff. Completely understand that. Don't want to get complacent. Don't want to start reading our own news clips and let a team like this come in and embarrass us, a la Denver Broncos 2021, in my opinion. So I'm definitely with you on that. So this matchup, Hollywood Brown. What I've noticed about Hollywood Brown is they put him everywhere. It's almost like they try to use him in a Debo Samuel Cooper Cup type role. So you might see him line up at the H-back. You might see him line up at running back. You might see him line up behind the tackle. You see him in the slot. He's running reverses. He's running jet sweeps. He's doing everything for this offense, trying to get him in the best matchups possible. So I say Trayvon Diggs, but really it's going to be everybody because they're going to line him up in the backfield a lot to see how we match up with him to try to get him on some linebackers and some safeties. And something I noticed they love to do is they'll put him at running back and then they'll let him run routes like along the sideline, like out routes and out and ups and stuff like that. So Hollywood Brown is definitely a guy to watch this week. He averages about a third of all the targets that Joshua Dobbs has. So he's definitely a focal point of that offense. And when he's healthy, he normally produces. So you definitely got to pay attention to that. William saying Parsons can handle him. He definitely can if he's lined up against him. And Jack Meeker saying Diggs is going to clamp him, Gilly and or Bland. Love to see J. Lou more this week also. This will probably be the week you see more J. Lou to get him in the game shape, in my opinion. A lot of opportunities to just get out there and run. And like I said, Jack Meeker, I love our cornerbacks, but they find ways to get Marquise Brown lined up against safeties and linebackers. So that would be my concern more than anything about seeing him play. But definitely, he plays a lot on the outside as well. So he's definitely going to see a lot of Trayvon Diggs. All right, guys, another key matchup I want to talk about. We got our tight end killer, J-Ron Curse, going against Zach Ertz. This is going to be another matchup that we have to pay close attention to. I just talked about Trayvon Diggs gets a third of the targets from the quarterback Dobbs. Zach Ertz gets the other third. So they're targeting their 2 key players heavily. I think they both average about 9 targets a game for the first 2 weeks. Zach Ertz is another guy, super athletic. If he's healthy, he's going to produce. With both of these guys, it's pretty much always been about health. Diggs got lucky last week, a lot of being burnt, but pressure and Hooker helped him big time. You know what? A great point, William Coulter. I talked about this a lot during the week as well. Just looking at some of those plays with Trayvon Diggs. I wish I can pull it up, but if I try to pull it up, NFL Plus will block it. so I probably have to screen record it. But if you go back and look at those on the all 22, in my opinion, it was pretty clear that the team was playing what you call a man free defensive scheme. So man free means everybody's playing man to man up front, basically. So all the corners were locked up man with the receivers. Um, the linebackers were kind of playing a semi zone on the running backs if they came out of the backfield, just covering the flats. Um, One Way Thomas, Marquise Bell, J. Ron Curse were all kind of alternating, playing man against the tight ends. And Malik Hooker, who was the free safety, the free part of the man free, his job was to be over top Garrett Wilson, plain and simple. So a lot of people try to say uh Diggs got burnt on that play. In my opinion, looking at the tape and watching some of the other plays as they progress, he was doing his job. He was playing a trail position on Wilson, and the free safety job was to be over top of Wilson wherever he went. Even going back to the touchdown they gave up, nobody says that it was Gilmore's fault because Gilmore was playing the trail position. The problem was Hooker took a bad angle and Wilson made them pay for it. The exact reason why I said they were playing man free. So definitely, if you get a chance, if you have an opportunity to get the all 22, make sure you go pull that up and judge for yourself whether Diggs was playing true man on man with Wilson, or if it was a man free with Wilson kind of shadowing. I'm sorry, with Hooker shadowing Wilson wherever he went. All right, let's get back into some of these key matchups. So now we'll go to the third key matchup. And in my opinion, this is probably going to be the most important one. Watching the tape, the Cardinals do not abandon the run. So unlike the Jets, if they're down 10, James Conner's still getting that rock. If they're up 5, James Conner's getting that rock. And James Conner loves to run off tackle. And he's a very explosive running back. He's very hard to bring down when he gets a head full of steam. And he hits those landmarks quickly. My biggest concern in this game is Leighton Vander Esch has a problem meeting running backs outside of the guard. We've seen it for the past probably 5 years. And he also has a problem bringing down running backs head on. So I feel like if there's any matchup that the Cardinals have that they can take advantage of, it's probably this one with Connor consistently beating Vander Esch to the edge and possibly out of the backfield on pass routes. And this one leads into play actions and bootlegs, which they do have a very mobile quarterback, and he can make some things happen with his legs. I see William Coulter making another comment about Diggs. He says Diggs likes to play soft and bait the quarterback and throw in his way so he can get a pick. That's definitely true also. And the people who disagree with me, that is what they say that they saw. They saw that Diggs was playing bait, hoping that Wilson would make the throw and that Wilson simply got further behind him than he thought and Hooker bailed him out. So it's really all up to perception. You can always find the play, see for yourself, make your own assessments about what you see. My opinion, it was man free, and Hooker's job was to be over top. But yeah, key matchup. This one is the one to watch. Their offense is dictated off of how well James Conner runs the ball. So now got one more key matchup to pay attention to, and we've kind of alluded to this one throughout the show. We're at 30 minutes, so guys, make sure continue to leave those great questions, great comments. We're getting close to over unders, so make sure that you're ready to be engaged and give your opinions on some of the key stats that we have coming up. Let's talk about one more matchup before we get to that, And that one is the guy we started the show talking about, Osa Odigizua versus Will Hernandez. Now, I know a lot of you Cowboy fans recognize the name Will Hernandez, former draft pick of the New York Giants, kind of bounced around the league a couple years, and now he's found his landing spot with the Arizona Cardinals. When you look at the tape against the Arizona Cardinals, and I said this in one of my chats, if you guys are familiar with the show Popeye, the cartoon Popeye, if you remember who Bluto was, Will Hernandez looks like Bluto with pads when he plays. Just a big, nothing but upper body guy. He does not move his feet at all when he comes off the ball. It's pretty much when the ball is snapped, he stands up and he tries to use his big, strong upper body to hold and take advantage of defensive linemen. Now, the problem that's going to happen is, and Jack Meeker, I agree, Osa's gonna scorch him. The problem is, and William Coulter says good comparison. So yeah, the problem is Osa is one of those rare athletes who's not only strong, he's also very quick. And you can see from the tape, he's learning how to use his hand placement to get separation. So you got a big defensive tackle who doesn't move his feet and relies heavily on getting his hands on a guy versus a defensive tackle who's extremely quick, powerful, and knows how to use technique to stay away from the guard. This is going to be a recipe for disaster for the Cardinals. Um, if I could bet on this, I would bet that Osa gets multiple sacks this week. I think he's going to really dominate this game because they have to send help to Paris Johnson on Parsons. There's no question about that. And Zach Ertz is not that help. Zach Ertz is a slot tight end. And if he plays in line, he's running routes 10 times out of 10. So they're going to have to send the running back his way to chip. They're going to have to shift protection over there, hope the guard and the tackle on that left side can hold up. And that's going to leave Will Hernandez in a lot of one-on-one situations with Osa. And I think Osa is going to have a dominant game against him this week. So before I go into over-unders, I got to talk about this, looking at the game. I said, you know what? I'll save it for the end of the show when I give my game predictions. So we're at 34 minutes. Guys, if you're still with me, make sure you keep those comments coming. If you're joining us for the first time, or if you haven't done so already, make sure you go to our social media, hit that subscribe button. You guys can find me on social media at Bluff City Cowboys on YouTube. Make sure you support, make sure you like, make sure you share this broadcast. Share it to your favorite Dallas Cowboys group. A lot of good stuff came out from tonight that the fans need to hear, as well as some of the great comments that were made by you guys that are watching. All right, guys. So let's move on to our last segment of the show where we really get you guys interacting with the format, and that is over under. So for the guys that are joining us for the first time, I like to give out stats based off the game and let you guys let me know if you think we're going to go over or under on that stat, just to get an idea of where the fan base feels the direction of the game will go, and also so that we can recap it next week to see if the team hit those landmarks that we talked about tonight. So let's get into it right now with this week's over under.
Over under.
All right, so the first over under, I talked about this a little bit, talking about Osa, but Joshua Dobbs is the quarterback, former Tennessee Vol, drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. was kind of an understudy for Ben Roethlisberger for a few years before he retired, and then he went along to, I believe he was at Cleveland, and he was traded from Cleveland to the Cardinals right before the season started and immediately named their starting quarterback. Before we get into that, William Coulter saying he wants to give a shout out to Mike McCarthy and his play calling. There's been no trick plays, no backwards plays of 20 yards. You know what, William? When we play the Chargers, we're going to talk a lot about that because I don't know if you're paying attention, but our former OC that a lot of fans were worried about losing, he's brought all that crap to LA and they're now 0-2. So something to keep an eye on, especially as we go into, I believe, week 6 or 7 and we play the LA Chargers. So Joshua Dobbs, a literal rocket scientist. I believe he majored in aeronautical engineering, still working on his doctorate while he plays football. Super intelligent kid. They got a lot of weapons in Arizona, a lot of speed. He has 2 targets. He targets heavily. I'm just laying it out there. Give you guys opportunity to give your thoughts on this. Over under 200 yards passing for Joshua Dobbs. Let me know what you think in the comments. So we got Mendoza saying under. Once again, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Over under Josh Dobbs, 200 passing yards. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think the quarterbacks the first 2 weeks of the season got over 200 yards passing. I would have to go back and look up Daniel Jones's stats, but I'm almost certain he did not reach the 200-yard benchmark. Let me pull it up really quick just so I can confirm it before I say it. Daniel Jones, week 1, had 104 passing yards. So, first 2 weeks of the season, Daniel Jones, 104 passing yards with 2 interceptions. Zach Wilson. I'm looking ahead to next week, guys. Sorry. Zach Wilson, 171 passing yards, 3 interceptions. Jack Meeker saying under. William Coulter saying under easily. You know what? I'm kind of on the fence with this one. I'm almost leaning over only because I think this game will be so far away. I think they surprised us a little bit early with a couple of good passes, and then later on in the game, they start kind of play from behind. I really like Josh Dobbs as a quarterback. This is probably the most talented receiving core that we'll play this year, or we'll play so far. My mistake. None of these guys are Garrett Wilson, but I would take their 1, 2, and 3 over any other receivers outside of Garrett Wilson that we played so far. Rondale Moore is another speed guy who can get behind the defense. So they have weapons that can catch the ball well. And they structured their offense in a way that they give him easy throws. I mean, our pass rush is unreal right now, so they're shutting everything down. But I'm actually leaning over on this one. I don't know why. I'm just leaning over on 200 yards for Joshua Dobbs. I see I'm on the island with that one. Everybody else is going under. So let's move on to our next over-under. This is another one we talked about in our key matchups. Let's see, we got another under. William Coulter, great point. Wilson had 60 yards on one play, and he still didn't get to 200. So great point, William. If you take away the 60-yard pass from Garrett Wilson, then Zach Wilson only had 110 yards passing. So take away that one play. You got Daniel Jones with 104 yards. and Zach Wilson with 110 yards. You're making me change my mind with that one, William. I'm gonna stick with over just because I said it. And I don't want to flip flop, so I'm gonna give him the over on this one. But let's go to our next matchup, and that is Zach Ertz over under 75 receiving yards. Jeff says push garbage time yards. You know what, Jeff? And this is a point to what William Coulter said. Pretty much the first two games it was all garbage time, and they still barely got 100 yards passing. So I just really like Joshua Dobbs, and I like the scheme that they're doing on tape. I think their scheme is good enough to get him some enough easy throws to get to 200. So it remains to be seen. Zach Ertz averaging 9 targets a game, going against our defense, over under 75 yards. I have no doubt he'll be the leading receiver this week, whatever that number is. So Jeff saying under on Zach Ertz 75 yards. William saying under. I see a lot of catches, but no yak. Dobbs throws a lot of short passes. Great point. They do, and that tells me you've watched the Cardinals play, William, because the Cardinals do rely heavily on a lot of drag routes or a lot of they run a lot of out routes. I noticed that. A lot of outs, a lot of drags, a lot of comebacks, and then the receivers trying to turn up field. So yeah, they rely heavily on yak yards. And I see we got Keystone joining us. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm assuming you saying over on Marquise Brown, and we'll get to that one next, Keystone. So stick with us. Jeff says I'll give him 50 plus. I'm kind of on those lines with you as well, Jeff. 75 yards. You know what? I am leaning under on that one. And Jack Meeker saying they will not truly challenge our defense. I think we both agree on that. Just offensive line alone is going to make it very difficult for them. My only concern is when you look at the first two games, before they went off the rails, the quarterbacks were having some success running the ball. And the one thing I'll say about the Cardinals, Josh Dobbs is going to keep trying to run the ball. And he has very good pocket presence. One of those things that you cannot teach a quarterback is pocket presence. And I think that he has that. So he's going to take some sacks. He's going to make some ugly throws. But if they don't have like a great blitz or rush package, Dobbs is good enough in his pocket awareness to be able to get outside and make a couple throws on the run. Jeff saying I just don't want us to overlook this team or any team. I definitely agree with that. And Keystone saying James Conner too. You must have been watching earlier in the show, Keystone, and just wasn't all the points that I hit about 10 minutes ago. William saying Arizona isn't going to have the ball long enough to get any of these over. Ask Zach Wilson. I'm just high on Joshua Dobbs, William. That's me. I think he's a good quarterback who hasn't got opportunity, and I really like his pocket awareness and mobility. So I think he's gonna make a couple of better throws than Zach Wilson and Daniel Jones made. All right, so let's keep it moving, and let's talk about a couple of our Cowboys over-unders. So I did this over-under last week, and I did it with any of our receivers, including CeeDee Lamb. But this week I'm doing a twist to it because none of our secondary receivers have really stepped up their game. but I really like what I saw from Jalen Tolbert. So over under 50 yards for any receiver not named CD Lamb. And Keystone saying Josh Dobbs almost beat us last year. Great point. Yeah, you can go back and watch that game to see how well his pocket awareness is and how he can make the simple throws if you give them to him. So, and thank you, Jeff. If you have over, also tell me which receiver it is. So Jeff saying over with Tolbert, and William saying, yeah, we played Dobbs last year. We was on Tennessee. I mean, they almost beat us, just like Keystone said. He had a decent game. Shane Odom asked the question, is Dobbs a better quarterback than Zach Wilson or Daniel Jones? In my opinion, I would say no to both. But I think he has a better receiving core than both of those guys. And I also think he has better pocket awareness than both of those guys. And pocket awareness goes a long way towards making certain throws. Some guys just don't have it. Some guys can have the strongest arms. They can be the fastest, a la Justin Fields, but they just can't make it happen. But they're great players. I think Dobbs is one of those players who's smart. He's mobile enough. He has good pocket awareness that he can make a couple of throws to make us to at least look better than those two guys did against us. For the season, I'd probably take Daniel Jones just because of talent and athleticism. But for this game, I would say Dobbs is going to probably be the best performing quarterback against us to date. All right, Keystone saying Gallup 50 yards. That's a surprise, Keystone. I guess you're expecting Gallup to finally turn things around this week. William saying Tolbert or Turpin. I didn't put Turpin up here, but thank you for bringing that one up. Turpin could definitely have a game over 50. Mendoza saying Tolbert and Cooks over 50. So that's interesting. Jeff says I think he gets a little shine in this game. And Coulter saying Gallup's been a disappointment so far this year. I definitely agree. Keystone saying Dobbs is a better quarterback than Wilson and Jones. I mean, in my opinion, a strong argument could be made that he is. I give Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt because he is a very athletic quarterback. But I think he does the traits that he has that make him a quarterback. I think those traits are better in him than they are in Zach Wilson and Daniel Jones, particularly pocket awareness. Jeff says Gallup 2 games away from losing his spot. You giving it 2 games, Jeff? I give it 2 games also. If Tolbert if Tolbert plays with Cooks and he performs the way he did last week when he touches the field, I give it 1 game. Because Tolbert, when he ran routes, he only made 3 catches, but I believe 2 of them were for first downs. And one of them was a run the route, press the corner, turn real quick, get the comeback, break a tackle, and then get an extra 4 or 5 yards to get the first. That's something we probably haven't seen Gallup do in 4 years. So even though Gallup may be the flashy fade route guy, he's not giving it to us on 2nd and 6 when we need it to get the chains moving. Mendoza with a great point. They're running a rookie cornerback too. Mendoza, let me know who their rookie cornerback is opposite Marco Wilson, because I know Marco Wilson's the other corner on the opposite side, but I can't think of the name of the corner next to him. Jeff saying it should have been gone. I mean, I agree. I mean, give Turpin more reps. Give Tolbert more reps. I mean, they gave Noah Brown snaps last year. Why can't we give the guy from training camp this year some opportunities to get some reps in an actual game? Keytrail Clark. I do not know that name, Mendoza. You always hit me with a name I don't recognize. But remember the name Keytrail Clark, guys, for this week. Yeah, Jeff said them slants, them sloppy slants Gallup run. When I watched the All 22, I think I maybe saw 2 routes where Gallup actually looked like he was running the route the way it was supposed to be run. The rest of them, it was like three hard steps off the line and then kind of coast. Um, wasn't trying to get across the corner's face, wasn't pressing the corner to go upfield. It was a lot of sloppy, lazy route running, in my opinion. And I don't want to see that come back to bite us in the butt, especially this week, because watching the Cardinals, first of all, I said this at the beginning of the show, and Keystone, this was actually our question of the week. I asked the question, should some of our key players play this week? And a lot of people agree with you that Cooks is one of those guys that shouldn't play along with Zach Martin. So back to the Cardinals. One thing I noticed about them is, first of all, like I said at the beginning of the show, probably the worst front seven that we face all year. I don't see any defensive lineman that can cause our offensive line to have any pressure. I mean, it's so bad in Arizona. I don't know if you guys remember the guy named Zaven Collins, former first-round pick, like 6'5", 245. I think he was out of Tulsa, the big linebacker. They've pretty much converted him to defensive end right now just because they don't have any talent on the edge. And he does not look good as a defensive end. The only advantage he has is he can get in his stance as a defensive end and then kind of stand up and drop in that zone. So that's something to be aware of this week because you got a 6'5" guy who's super athletic, who can get in those passing lanes on slants and comebacks. So definitely got to be aware of that. But in terms of pass rush, there's nothing. And yeah, Tyron's going to cook them for sure. And to make up for that, the Cardinals have to do a lot of linebacker gap blitzes. And to me, the linebackers aren't that good either. So that leads to a recipe of disaster when your defensive line can't get any penetration. Your linebackers aren't very good. I'm expecting to see, I save that for over-under, but I'm expecting to see a very big game from our offense and some of his key players. Talking about the secondary, because they do so much in the front seven to try to generate pressure. Yeah, Mendoza, I agree with you on this one. And that's because of what I'm about to say. When you look at the defense, first of all, their best defensive player is gone, Buda Baker. He's on IR right now. And their corners play a heavy zone where they're literally just backpedaling and trying to read the quarterback's eyes and be aggressive on jumping routes. That's going to get them killed this week. If we have a chance to do a double move, I expect to see at least one big play for our receivers. And I also expect to see a big game from our tight ends, kind of like Mendoza said. Our tight ends are very good at finding soft spots in zones. All three of them, completely interchangeable. So I'm expecting to see a big game from particularly Ferguson and Schoonmaker if he gets a chance to play as well. Keystone saying, I want to see Rico this game. This is one of those games where you can really see Rico at his best because he's one of those one-cut, hard runners, and this is the type of game that fits his skill set perfectly. So let's go back to our last over under of the night. We're at 55 minutes and we'll get out of here. Last over under is Tony Pollard. Pollard had 25 carries last week. He's had 70 yards 2 weeks in a row. So over under 75 yards rushing for Tony Pollard. Keisto coming with the quick over. Mendoza right behind him with over. I'm going heavy over on this one. William Coulter over also. All right, David Dermer looks like a new name, so thank you for joining us. Whatever Facebook group you're watching from, definitely appreciate your support. Hope you continue to join us on the Cowboy Zone every Wednesday night, and keep coming back, making comments and leaving questions. Like I was saying before I put this up there, their secondary plays a very heavy zone, and their defensive line is not good. In my opinion, Carlos Watkins, the Carlos Watkins who was on our practice squad last year, he was their best defensive lineman week 1 and week 2 when he played. He's not playing this week. They just got a bunch of guys, in my opinion. So I expect to see particularly Tony Pollard getting a lot of big runs this week. Our tight ends are all very good blockers. Even if we don't have a full complement of players on our offensive line, I think our offensive line is good enough to make some holes for Pollard. And Pollard's one of the best running backs in the league when it comes to hitting a hole and going full speed to gain extra yardage. So I'm expecting Pollard to have about 115, 120 yards this week, personally. I think it's going to be that big of a game. Their nose tackle, Fotu, I mean, he's a big guy. I think he's like 6'5", 330. Big kid out of Utah, but not very athletic. If you can seal him off, everybody else can be taken care of easily. Jeff coming with the bold predictions. Speaking of that, I'm almost certain my schedule will be clear this Sunday for me to do a pregame show. So make sure you guys check Saturday night, Sunday morning to see if I post a pregame show. We'll try to get back this week with our weekly pregame show where we do some of our favorite segments when it comes to the injury report, bold predictions, game predictions, and fantasy favorites. So we should have a lot to talk about this Sunday if we do the pregame show, but check back with me Saturday or Sunday morning to see if we're available to do that show. And Jeff, I'll make a note of this bold prediction just in case. And David, thank you. Appreciate it. William Coulter says Arizona's not even trying to win. I see a lot of deuce this game because we pull everyone. That would be a great feeling to see the team pull starters early to get prepared for the rest of the week. Jeff says, I wish I could watch the game. Damn you, Xfinity. Jeff, we'll touch base. I don't know if I should say this over the air, but I have a way for you to be able to watch the game, and I get that to you so you can watch it. I don't want to get pulled off the show, but yeah. I'll make sure if you can't watch it on Fox that you'll be able to watch the game live. And thank you, David. I always appreciate supporters like you. Your comments and questions and follows from guys like you or a few of the Cowboys on. So make sure you come back and join us. All right, so that's pretty much it for this week's show. We're right at 1 hour. I won't do game predictions this week because I'm almost certain we're going to do our pregame show this Sunday. And I like to save game predictions and bold predictions for the Sunday show. And Keystone saying, be careful. Every Dallas game was a Super Bowl to our opponent. That's definitely true. No matter how bad their season looks, even if they look competitive against the Cowboys, not winning, if they look competitive, every show on the Talking Head networks is going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. That's the Dallas Cowboy effect. And that's what make teams like this give us their A game. Shane Odom saying we should do an over under how many yards Cooper Rush has. So you're assuming Dak gets pulled pretty early and Cooper Rush takes over the game. I see what you did there, Shane Odom. David, we normally do our pregame show at 11 o'clock. No, I'm sorry. We do the pregame show at 11:15. So we do 30 to 45 minutes. We pull the final injury report, let you guys know who's playing and who's not. We also do a segment called Bold Predictions, where you guys will give us your boldest prediction on what you think will happen in the game. And if it happens, we give away prizes. We also do our game prediction, and we do some of the keys to victory and some of the fantasy favorites around the league. William says, how's that been working for him? Keystone 70 to 10. I really like this Cardinals team. And I'll say this. I think the Cardinals have a chance to score first on us. Like if we win the toss and we defer, I think they have a very good chance to score on us. And I'm pretty confident they're going to score the most points that anybody scored on us so far this year. Now, mind you, that's 0-10. So it doesn't take a lot to have the highest score against us. But yeah, I can see this team getting 17 points just because of how their offense plays. I hope I'm wrong. I could be wrong. If I am, you guys can feel free to screenshot this and post it. But I really like the skill players the Cardinals have. I like the quarterback. I like how their talent matches up to some of the very few weaknesses our defense has. And again, I think they'll be motivated because like Keystone said, this is their Super Bowl. But yeah, William, it is definitely 11:15 Central, Facebook, Twitter, Facebook X, and YouTube. So yeah, that's pretty much it we have for this week's show. Once again, thank you guys for joining us. As always, we appreciate your support. Hopefully we'll get Lambeau back within the next couple of weeks. He's dealing with some personal stuff. So, make sure you guys continue to keep watching us. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Bluff City Cowboys, Facebook, Bluff City Cowboys, Twitter, Bluff Cowboys, and you can find my co-host Lambeau on Facebook, X, and YouTube at Cowboys Y'all. So thank you guys for joining us for the show. Once again, great questions, great comments from all you guys. I always look forward to coming on the show because I love to reach out to my Cowboy fan base brothers from all around the country who tune into the Cowboy Zone. You guys fuel the show. You guys motivate me to do the show. So thank you guys for all that you do. And be sure to join us next Wednesday at 8:30 Central Standard Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for the Cowboy Zone, as well as Sundays at 11:15 Central Standard Time for our pregame show. So once again, this is Marcus, Bluff City Cowboy. Wishing you all a good night, and let's go Cowboys. We'll see you Sunday.